So this evening, I want to talk to you about confronting or speaking truth to power. And I want to challenge you tonight to think through this and to think about how this might help you in your own life. I want to remind you of a concept I shared with you last week, which was to remind you that when we talk through these narratives like this, we do so for two reasons. One, we want to learn about it, and we want to learn from it, okay? When you study Old Testament narratives and New Testament narratives, there are many reasons for the narratives being given to us, but we want to understand it, learn about it, but learn from it. And this evening we talk about Ahab and Elijah and the event at Mount Carmel and this speaking truth to power. I want to encourage you to let God speak to your heart, okay? I was at this conference, it's a conference and a board meeting Monday and Tuesday. I was reminded about the challenge, okay, the challenge many churches are facing in the time in which we live. And the challenge is this, that many Christians have developed a sound bite mentality. It's not on your outline. This is free. I won't charge you for this one tonight. But they've developed a sound bite mentality. Now, what is a sound bite mentality? A sound bite mentality, I'll give you a working definition, is when somebody is either unwilling or unable to talk to anybody who thinks different than them. The inability or unwillingness or inability to talk with someone who disagrees. And so we have people who have developed and that's not unique to Christians, in our society we have that. In fact, recently I heard a news article about the challenge of recruiting new police officers, young police officers. And one of the very unique challenges to hiring young police officers in today's culture is not Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter or Pink Lives Matter or whatever. It's not that. It is the vast majority of young adults have really no concept or grasp in the art of actually talking to somebody. And when you are dealing with a home problem, a home issue, or in public you pull somebody over in the car for speeding, you can't actually text them. You can't tweet them. You can't post them on Facebook. Because you have to talk to them, okay? And so many police departments are in their training have had now to develop a significant amount of effort to actually teach the young men how to talk to other people. And surprisingly enough, maybe not surprisingly, to actually listen and to be able to engage in social interaction where people, there's no devices involved, okay? Now, I'm not like, it's just the facts, okay? And so, in the pastors I talked to at this meeting, from all over the country, many of them are finding in their churches, a lot of the people have got these certain positions on certain issues, which are irrelevant to talk about right now, because I don't have to, you know what I'm talking about, just different kinds of issues. And they have this is it. And you know why this is it? Because I found somebody that agreed with me. And I saw it on Facebook. I saw it online. Okay? Because the reality is, most people that are really solid about something, very few of them have the technical knowledge to really know what they're talking about. Okay? And I'm not. I don't have the technology when I go to my doctor, he said, we need this medicine. Well, I don't know. I guess I need it. Hopefully I need it. I trust you, so I'll take it, But whatever. Okay. All right, but here's the point, okay? What these pastors were finding, that we've been blessed here, okay, because we've said this to you before, and y'all know this, so I've preached this before, not preached it, but said it in a preemptive way in the last year and a half, or 2 years, I guess now, and that is this. We're not going to fight over any of this silliness. We're not going to fight over masks. We're not going to fight over the shot. We're not going to fight over isolation. We have a very clear COVID policy, and our COVID policy is simply this, that intelligent and reasonable people do intelligent and reasonable things. And since you are intelligent and reasonable, then have a good life. And that's our policy, okay? So you say, well, no, you got to do this. No, we don't have to do anything, actually, okay? And except God's will. But what happens is, I'm just saying this to give you the backdrop of what I'm saying here, what these guys were telling, was sharing with, not everybody in the church, but there's a couple in almost every church that are like crusaders of this particular thing, whatever it is. And if it's not the current thing, you go back 3 years ago, there was something else. And 5 years ago was something else, where they get locked in and they can't really talk through it with anybody, with any kind of grace, of patience, of accepting the fact that we all are working through things. I don't know about you, but I don't know everything I hope I'll one day know if I live long enough. However, whatever age you are tonight, don't you hope that a year from now you know stuff you don't know now? Don't you? I mean, hopefully. If not, then what's the point, you know? I mean, if you're flatline, I guess it's different. But if you're not flatline, upstairs, you want to learn stuff. And so hopefully a year from now, I will know stuff I don't know now. And so I'll grow in my knowledge and understanding of things. Now, I say that to say this. When it comes to dealing with people in authority, we sometimes struggle. Let me ask you a question. If you lived in 1776 and you were a Christian, what side would you be on? What side would you be on? Would you be with the colonist? Or would you be would you be loyal to the crown? Okay? What would you be? What is the Christian response? Because you do realize, don't you, because I know you know your history, that the Revolutionary War was not a war between the colonist and Parliament. Not even a war against the colonist and England. It was a war between the colonist and the king. That's what the war is about, okay? And so, what side would you be on? But here's the thing. Do you know how you would respond biblically? If you were in Germany in 1945 and you were a Christian in leadership, and Brother Bonhoeffer came to you and said to you, we are about ready to put this suitcase or this piece of luggage where Hitler is next to this table to blow him up. Would you support that? If you were a German citizen, could you? Could you be the guy that put the explosives around his body, put a coat over it, and walked into this building where Hitler was supposed to be? I think it was 44, I think it was. And it was a timer on it. There was a timer on it. A timer. It wasn't like, so it's timer, they had to figure the time. Hitler was supposed to be there between X and Y time. So he goes in with this coat and this bomb, and Hitler leaves early. And this guy's standing there with this timer on him. Well, he's got a problem because Hitler's gone. Well, they diffused it, and he lives, I think, dies in 1970 something, the guy does. And so he survived. But where would you be? You say, well, we're not there. I know we're not there, and hopefully we'll go there. But the point is, you got to learn how to respond to people in authority when they need to be confronted with the truth. That's what we're going to learn from this passage, okay? We're going to try to draw some things from principles, okay? Now we're not going to, none of us are, I'm not going to go out at the Jockey's Ridge and build an altar and pray down fire, okay? So I'm not planning on doing that anytime. So I'm not going to do it because God hadn't told me to do it, okay? So I'm not going to go to D.C. and pray down fire, okay? Actually, I enjoy walking around D.C., okay? Without the riots, of course, but I enjoy walking around D.C. But I need to learn how to handle it. And you need to learn to handle it with the people you work with. You need to think it through, okay? Because it's not as easy as it sounds. Well, bless God, I'm right. Well, you can be right and ineffective. You can be right and be offensive. You can be right and close the door to understanding on the part of others by the way you respond, right? You got to be careful, okay? Now, I want to give you a starting point, okay? And that is this, okay? Here's the starting point. Confronting power is not easy, and it is not simple. It is not easy, and it is not simple. Okay, now people who think it's simple just have not done it, have not done so effectively or, I think, wisely. Now, I want to illustrate this to you, okay? So take your Bibles and turn. You got me to 1 Kings. Well, we'll get there. Maybe this tonight. I'm sure we will tonight, sometime, okay? At least we hope to. Acts chapter 16, okay? Acts chapter 16. Okay, now I want you to think through this passage with me, okay? Acts chapter 16, okay? Now you have, of course, the beginning of it, you have Paul going on the missionary journey with second journey with Timothy and all of that. But then he goes and look at verse 14 of chapter 16. And a certain woman named, what's her name? Lydia, seller of purple. She gets saved, okay, right? Pretty awesome thing. Okay, she gets saved, okay? Now look at verse 18. We're going to draw it down. I'm not going to preach this passage. Look at verse 18. And this lady now, this demon-possessed lady is following Paul around. And here's what, verse 18. And this did she many days, which is verse 17. She cried and was being distracted. But Paul, being grieved, turned and said unto the Spirit, I command thee in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her. And he came out the same hour. Now he delivers her from demon possession. So Lydia gets saved. That's a pretty cool thing. Okay, right? And then this lady is delivered from demons. Well, that's a pretty good meeting. Anybody's book. I mean, we can write that in the Sword of the Lord or something, or put it in the magazine saying, hey, we're having a great meeting here, okay? And well, things went sideways pretty quick, okay? Look at verse 20. And they brought them to the magistrate, saying, these men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive. Now, see, this is authority. It's not lawful for us to receive this. Neither observe, being Romans. Because you have to remember now, in first century, the Christians were persecuted not because they believed in God, not because they believed in Jesus, but they believed in God, in Jesus, at the exclusion of all other gods. It is not only the singular sufficiency of God and of Christ was the source of conflict. If we were to just go along to get along, had they done that and said, well, yeah, I can worship Jesus, and this guy worshiping the Caesar, that's okay too. No. So they're bringing in legality here, okay? And verse 22, and the multitude rose up together against them, and the magistrate rent off their clothes and commanded to beat them. Now, the magistrates are those in charge. So now they are claiming legal offense, and the authority is coming and beating them, okay? Verse 23, and when they had laid many stripes upon them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safe. And they put them in stock. And then in verse 25, with the awesome verse, okay, they're having a Babacostal fit in verse 25. Now, these guys are not in good shape physically and geographically. They've been beaten and they're in jail. And at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners heard them. They are just praising God in the midst of this. That's pretty awesome. And of course, you know about the jailer, the earthquake, and then the jailer gets saved. All right? Now, all of that. Now, look at verse 37, okay? What happened, well, verse 35. And when it was the day, the magistrate sent the decision saying, let those men go. And the keeper of the prison told this to Paul, and the magistrates, having sent to let them go, now therefore depart and go in peace. Well, that's you know, after we beat you and thrown you in jail, have a nice life. But Paul, this is one of 3 times in Acts, where Paul plays the citizen card. 3 times he plays it in the book of Acts. Not all the time, but 3 times. Okay? He didn't play. He could have said something in verse 22 and 23, but he didn't. Here, they have beaten us openly and uncondemned, being what? Romans. And has cast us into prison. Okay? And look at verse 38. And they sojourned, the sergeants told the words unto the magistrate, and they feared. Because that was like, they're in big trouble now, okay? What I'm saying to you is this, that Paul did not always use his citizenship card. He did in chapter 22 and 25. He suffered, but he was mindful when he dealt with authority. And I just want to challenge you to understand something, okay? When you're dealing with authority that is not doing right, you've got to think through what you're trying to accomplish and how to move forward, okay? Now, with that said, let's go back to chapter 18, okay? And let's get the setting here, okay? As we get the setting in verses 1 through 4, let's do the geography here, a little geography lesson here. I love geography. Well, not really. Oh, I do. I like it a lot, I guess. Okay. All right, so here you have Israel. Okay. Now, this time period, what is the nation Israel? Give me the synonym for the nation of Israel. What's the synonym for the nation of Israel? We're in 1 Kings 18. We've had 17 chapters of this. Don't let me down. I've been flying all night. Come on, give me some grace here. Israel is also known as the what? Thank you. Because I was wondering how you would get home tonight. Okay, all right. Okay. The Northern Kingdom, right? Remember? Split kingdom? Okay, remember? Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay. Israel is a name that sometimes refers to the whole nation of Israel, but then once the nation splits up and you have the north and the south, the Israel talks is the northern kingdom is Israel. Do I dare try? The southern kingdom is called what? Ah, there you go. Yeah, you all get a glass of water tonight. Okay, all right, so exactly. So this is Israel. This is the northern kingdom. Samaria is where the capital is, okay? All right. So, remember chapter 17, okay? Remember back last week. Okay. Verse 17, chapter 17, verse 1. And Elijah, the Tishbite, who was an inhabitant of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As Lord God of Israel liveth, behold, before whom I stand, there shall not dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. So he said, a drought is a-coming. Okay, and so he does that about here somewheres, and then he takes off first over to here, okay, to the brook, and then it dries up, okay, and then he goes 400 miles, basically from here to Raleigh, maybe Durham, from here to here, and lives on the coast for a couple of 2 or 3 years, okay, not too far, by the way, from where Ahab's wife, whose name is Jezebel, Jezebel is from this area here, okay? And so he goes up there and hangs out there with the widow woman who has, it's like somebody, I went to, where did I go last night for dinner? Red Robin. Okay, it's supposed to have unlimited what? Fries. Why you'd want them, I don't know. If they were 5 guys, you would, but we won't go there. Okay, but he had this unlimited supply of food through the widow lady. Okay, so that's what's happened up to this point. Okay, and now he's going to come back to about here and have this big event coming up in chapter 18. Okay, but for these 3 years. That's been raining over here maybe, and down here, and possibly up here, but over here, there's been a drought going on. And they didn't have a lot of water supply backed up here, okay? So there's a great famine going on, great suffering going on, okay, during this time, okay? Now, with that said, look at chapter 18, okay? And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. Now, review question from last week that's designed to get us ready for the 3 days of prayer and fasting that's happening starting a week from Monday. It did not rain for 2 reasons. One reason was because God said it wasn't going to rain. But what was the second reason why it didn't rain? Do what? Yes, Elijah prayed. The Bible's very clear about this, okay? He prayed, it stops raining. He prays, it rains again. No, preacher, because God said it. That's true. But the will of God works inseparably and corporately, or however you want to say it, works along with us praying. So a week from Monday, and a week from Tuesday, and a week from Wednesday, when in fact, okay, we're going to spend 3 days of different kinds of prayer and different kinds of fasting, hopefully device fasting, hopefully food fasting, to whatever degree God leads you to, or other kind of fasting, however God leads you. You're going to spend hopefully at least 1 hour a day praying on 3 consecutive days. Okay? An hour on Monday, an hour on Tuesday, an hour on Wednesday. Preferably more than an hour, but at least an hour. That's the goal. Okay? You say, well, we're not being legalistic. We're just challenging you to do it. Okay? Why? Because the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. All right? So, what happens here, okay, look at verse 22. And Elijah went to show himself to Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. So that's like verses 1 and 2 is part of the setting here. And then from verses 3 down to verse 14, you have like the rest of the setting going on here. Okay? And Ahab called Obadiah, okay, which was the governor of the house. He was a high position in Ahab's administration, okay? And he feared the Lord greatly. He was a godly man. It's really interesting. Ahab was so wicked. He was the worst king yet. I mean, he was just terrible. And all this idolatrous worship, okay? But he had at his chief of staff, in essence, a person who loved God, who feared God, okay? Why? Because, I don't know all the reasons why, other than God's grace there, but Ahab, in his mind, he would say, well, I worship God, but I also worship this other stuff too. Okay? Because he's so perverted in his thinking. Okay? Look at verse 4. And it was so when Jezebel cut off, let's go back to 3. No, verse 4. And it was so that when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them, 50 in a case. So he was really godly, and he protected some of the prophets of God. Okay? Verse 5. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, go into the land, unto all the fountains of water, and unto all the brooks, peradventure we may find grass to save the horses. That's Ahab's talking to Obadiah. This is given the setting here. So what's happening here is you have this godly man, Ahab calls, and he is being told by Ahab to go and find some supplies so we don't lose all the animals, okay? And he tells, verse 7, and as Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him. And he knew him, and he fell on his face and said, art thou that my Lord Elijah? Now, they haven't seen him in a couple of years. Remember this, he comes on the scene in chapter 17. It's not going to rain. And then he takes off. They don't see him for 3 years. No Facebook post, no tweet, nothing, okay? All right? They don't know where he's at, all right? And verse 8, and he answered, he answered him, I am him. Go tell my Lord, behold, Elijah is here, okay? Tell thy Lord. And he said, what have I sinned? Now here is Obadiah's response. Have I sinned, okay, that thou wouldest deliver thy servant into the hand of Ahab to slay me? Now I'm just going to summarize the rest of this, okay? This part of it. What happened was the king wanted to get his hands on Ahab. Ahab wanted to get his hands on Elijah. And he wanted to get him. But nobody knew where he was at. And Obadiah says, listen, if you tell me to go to the king and we come and you go someplace else and we don't find you, he's going to have my head. And so Elijah says, no, it's all good. It's all good. I am going to show up. Okay? And so he does, and they come to the meeting place. Okay? And then in verse 15, Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts liveth before whom I stand, I will surely show myself unto him that day. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And so the narrative, the setting is in verses 1 to 14, and then 15 forward, the whole drama begins, okay? Because Ahab shows up. We're going to do the first one, okay, tonight. We'll give you one, and the other 1, 2, 3, 4 we'll give you next week, okay? And so if you can't be here next week, you can watch it online if you want to, or whatever, okay? All right, so number one is this, okay? I have got to make sure that when I am confronting somebody, that I am doing it in the leadership of God, okay? I've got to ask myself the question, is the purpose of me saying something so I can look good, or I can build myself up, or I can put that self down? We had a significant issue to deal with at the board meeting this week, and this Monday and Tuesday, and there's something came up, and it's not important to this point, this illustration, what it was, but some kind of controversial thing. So I had a very pressing perspective to share with somebody in authority in the meeting. So, I went to the person privately and said, I need to ask you this question. It went good because it helped me to understand I had misunderstood something, and that's why there was a problem, and we worked it out and we were able to move forward. But I've got to ask myself the question, why am I saying this? Is God leading me? Now, I want to broaden out here in a sidebar and just challenge you about something. We live in a very unique country. There are other countries like this, but we're not the only country like this, but we're unique in that we have a system of government that allows and encourages diversity of thought to be expressed, at least on paper it does, okay? And so we have a system of government where we have the right to say what we want to say, okay? Supposedly, the freedom of speech, right? Is there freedom of speech? Well, maybe in some places, but be that as it may. But we have to make sure that we don't confuse the fact of having the right to say something is the same thing as God want me to say it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you shouldn't say it, but you need to ask yourself the question, when you say it, does God want you to say it? Now, whatever it is, but shouldn't that be true in every area of our life? That's a Romans 12:1 principle, right? Okay? That's a 1 Corinthians 10:31 principle. Whether you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, you are the glory of God. So, just because I have the right to say something doesn't mean I should say it, okay? I was at a restaurant recently, and it was with somebody, and it was another guy. We were talking, and we were trying to spend some time together, talk about some stuff. And the lady brought me this very nice thing of Diet Coke, which I tend to like a little bit, and then very nice glass of water. And the glass was actually quite not invited at all. Did you wash this one? Just get this from the table over there, But I didn't say anything. I just took the thing, put it out to the side, and went on. Why? Because though I had the right to say something, it just wouldn't have been good for the purpose of the meeting I'm having right there. You see what I'm saying? That's a silly illustration. But the same thing applies in other areas, okay? For example, you probably know people who disagree with you on certain things. And all you have to do is say it, and the fight is on. And like cat, or dogs, or whatever animal you want to use, okay? Like that, okay? And particularly if they're family members, right? Right? Don't you're not mad. You have a family member, all you got to do is say, make America great again, and then you got like, or, well, isn't Biden wonderful? Whatever you want to say, okay? And don't even say the word shot, because then then you got to get the knives out and in the family. So I'm just saying, you know what I'm talking about, right? Yes. All right, thank you. All right, so the question is, does God want you to say it? Does God want you to bring it up, okay? Now, what's the context here, okay? Well, look at verse 15. And Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts liveth, before whom I stand. Now, he said that again earlier in chapter 17. Does that strike a bell? Verse 17, verse 1. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was an inhabitant of Gilead, and Ahab, as the Lord of God of Israel liveth, and before whom I stand. You see, I want to give you two things to write down. Here's the first one, okay? I believe he's saying here, at some level, that I'm being directed by God. I'm being directed by God. And second, that I am being enabled by God. And so I've got to ask myself the question, and it can be all kinds of things. I remember I worked at a place one time, and the guy comes to me and says, "Hey, Tony, I want you to go next door." Well, he didn't say, "Hey, Tony," but he said, "Tony," well, he did say whatever. He said, "Go next door and buy me some cigarettes." I was working at this particular place. And I said, "Well, you know, I go buy you a Coke. I even go buy you coffee. I hate tea. I'll go buy you tea. But I'm a Christian. I can't go buy you cigarettes." I just couldn't do it. And I was nice about it. I didn't like spit on him or kick his foot or anything. I just couldn't do it. I just felt like I wasn't going to do it. Okay. And so, but I was right. But I must confess to you that more than once, because I love history. I'm a history buff a little bit, and all politics is like history in real time. That's what politics, current events is history in real time, okay? So today's current events is what 6 months from now or 6 years from now or 60 years from now, it's going to be the history, right? So I know some people, if I bring it up, we're going to have not a very positive conversation. You think that should stop me? It should stop me, but does it always stop me? Not always. Not with my family especially. When I was younger, more particularly. And so you got to be careful and ask yourself the question, is God directing you? Elijah felt, now watch this, there was a time. Let me give you a couple of references to write down, okay? Okay? In Acts 23, verses 1 to 5, okay? In Acts 23, 1 through 5, Paul is being interrogated inappropriately and contrary to the law. He gets hit. He calls the priest a bad name, not a cursed name, but a name, a derogatory name. And the guy that's there says, "How would you dare speak against the high priest that way?" To which Paul says, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Hey, I was wrong." Because even though he was an idiot, and he didn't say this, okay, even though he was wrong, I shouldn't speak ill of the high priest, God's anointed. Well, you do realize, and this is a challenge to think, got to work this in your own mind. You do realize that Biden is God's anointed. He said, "Wait a minute, preacher. We're going to have a fight right now." Okay, okay, listen, okay? Romans 13. The powers that be are what? Ordained of God. Okay, and that was true for Trump, and that was true for Obama, and that was true for Bush 2, and that was true for Clinton, it was true for Bush 1, that was true for Reagan, it was true for Ford, it was true for Carter and Ford, Nixon, and go on down. It's all true. Because God's in control, even of your governor. Now, does that mean you can't voice your opinion? It doesn't mean that, but it means you have to be careful. You have to be acknowledgement and conscious of the fact. It doesn't mean that you can't talk to the people you work under at work. That you can't go to your boss and say, "I need to talk about this." Let me give you a reference to write down. Matthew chapter 14, verses 3 to 5. John said, verse 4 says, and John, this is John the Baptist, said unto him, that be Herod, "It is not lawful for thee to have her." You shouldn't have your brother's wife. So it is right for us to speak truth to power. But we have to make sure that we're being directed by God, and that we're dependent upon Him and being able by Him in how we do it. Because that way it's going to be different, okay? Now, the 4 other principles we're going to learn next week, and it won't be as painful as this part of it was. And we're going to go through that and try to equip you to think through. This is to help you to think so you can engage with people who are in authority over you, engage with people that are on the same level of you, and even engage appropriately people that are under you as far as authority structure goes, in a way that allows you to accomplish something. And what do you want to accomplish? You want to accomplish God's will. And that should not be any less important to you when it comes to things you have to speak to authority about like this, as it is everything else.